Hi everyone, I'm Christopher Nichols here at Rogers Gardens. I'm the Lifestyle and Design Manager here at Rogers, and that sounds like a very fancy title, and actually what that means is that I'm part of the creative team here. I manage a team of artisans and creative designers, and we actually make all of the products that are behind you, all of these beautiful original designs that we make. Each season we make about 700 wreaths, about 1,000 garlands, and I was like, they're each handmade for you, and today I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks on how you can do it at home. As we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about where wreath making actually came from. It's actually part of the Roman Empire for the Olympics. If you remember, it's like I said, they used to wear those little Caesar adornments on their heads. And then during the 19th century, it became a Victorian tradition to deck the halls. And that comes from Lewis Carroll's writings about decking the halls with boughs of holly. And it usually all of the wreaths that were made during the period of time actually came from cuttings from the Christmas trees. They were the leftovers that they were, and it's always a sign of light and hope and sort of the completion and the circle of life, if you will. That's the symbology of a wreath on your door. So we're working with faux materials today, artificial if you will, and there's some really positive reasons to use that. One, if you have children or pets around the house, they can't get into them, they're not poisonous, they're really great to have. And again, if you're allergic or your loved one is allergic to them, again, it's really great, they're long lasting, they will make great gifts, and they store for a long, long time. All right, everyone, so we want to get started, and the few things that you're going to need, we're going to need some glue sticks and a glue gun. We've got some wire cutters here that we're going to need. We've also got our scissors, of course, and of course, I always keep around a lovely stirring stick that's branded Rogers Gardens. Also, we're going to need a few items for this. The silks that we're going to be using are high quality. They got a little bit of frost on them, so we've got some berries here. We've got some shatterproof ornaments in about a 40 millimeter cluster. And we've also got this really cool iridescent holly that we're going to be using, and it's got these great kind of snowy red berries on it. And the last thing we're going to need is what we call a rustic wire, and this is going to be used actually on the back of the wreath to hang it. So we're going to start with our 24-inch permanent faux wreath here, and again, when you first get these, a lot of times they're sort of not as fluffy as this one, so what you want to do is you want to take a little bit of time and you actually want to fluff it up a little bit. I'm going to be working towards the direction here that you can see how I'm working, so I'm actually going to be reaching over and doing this as we do it. So first thing that I always like to do is I always like to take all these little tendrils and I like to pull them from the center of the wreath kind of outward to get that full sort of breadth of 24 inches all the way across. So it's like I said, and as we're doing that, this is just going to allow for a better surface for everything to be adhered to with our hot glue as we go around. So I'm just going all the way around the wreath, and we're actually pulling, and we're, just again, we just want to make that surface as wide as possible through this space and this space. And as we do that, that is a nice fluffy wreath. That's exactly how you want it. So again, we just have this kind of amazing lush greenery. Always start with a quality product. Don't go on the cheap. So we're going to turn our wreath over first, and what we really want to do is something very important, and again, as a professional designer and everything, I always like to make sure all the details are there when I work for clients. And one of the things I have here is a rustic wire. It's actually a wire that's actually covered in a sisal, and it's like I said, I'm going to use this as my wreath hanger. So I'm going to take my wire cutters, and I'm actually going to clip off about a 12-inch piece. And from there, that's what I'm going to actually use. I'm going to kind of put it in a U shape, if you will. And I'm actually going to put that on the back top of the wreath. And we're actually just going to kind of loop it around. And we're going to make sure that we clip off the excess. And there's our wreath hanger. All right, now that our wreath is all prepared and ready for us, we're actually going to start placing some of our components here. And we're first going to start with our icy holly. And it's like I said, on this particular wreath, again, we're going to use groups of everything. So our icy holly is actually going to come off to the left side of the wreath. And I'm actually going to cut this into smaller sections. So I'm going to use my wire cutters, and I'm just going to start cutting it into pieces. And we just kind of want to prepare everything, sort of like a chef. First is you want to make sure that you've got all your pieces and your components ready. So I'm just going to cut all these pieces. All right, we've got our holly cut. Now we are actually going to go ahead and cut our berry stems as well. And we're just going to take off. It's like I said, it's got a nice, sort of about a 12-inch stem on it, but we're not going to need all of that. So I'm actually just going to cut probably about 8 inches of that off and leave a little bit of trail here where that's where the glue is actually going to be on the stem and adhere to the wreath. So we're going to cut all of our berries. All right, now we are ready to actually start designing our wreath. And one of the things that I'd always like to start with is what I call sort of the largest element or the most focal element on the wreath. So that's actually going to be our icy holly here. And we're going to take our glue gun that we have warmed up. Make sure you don't touch the tip of a glue gun. That's a safety tip for all of you out there because it's very hot. So, and we're actually just going to sort of run a bead of glue along the stem, just at the base, just enough all the way around. And we're going to take that, and again, working in the element of grouping, it's like I said, we're going to kind of start at the top, and we're just going to run that in to the wreath, and we're going to let the glue do its job. We're not going to touch the wreath. Again, you'll burn your hands. So just let that work its way, kind of working also on the inside to the outside, sort of motion, if you will, to make sure that, again, when it's hanging up against the wall or hanging on your door, that it's full on the outside of it, as well as when people peer into the middle of it, you're also going to be able to have the holly there. All right, and we're just finishing up on the holly. And again, as you can see, we've got the cluster stripe sort of holly right through here. We get some of you, are going to run into this sort of like pesky little glue tendrils kind of hanging around and everything. One of the tips that I have there for you is to use a blow dryer on heat setting and just go through the wreath with that, and it will take care of all of those little glue spikes. All right, we now are ready to move on to our berry stems, our little snowy berry stems, or boxwood berries. Looks really amazing. It's got a nice sort of avocado shade to it. And same thing, same technique here for this. We are actually going to just put a bead of glue along the stem, and then we're going to take that stem and we're going to work in the opposite direction, moving towards the right of the wreath. And again, we're going to have that come together a little bit with the holly right here at the top. And we're going to do just our placement. Same way, we're going to run all the way around to the right of it in a downward movement, just to give it some harmony and consistency in direction. All right. And again, we also want to make sure the same thing we did with the holly on this side. We want to make sure that we're working on sort of the outer perimeter of the wreath as well as the interior. You don't want there to be holes or blank spots. So again, you're just looking for consistency, and some of this I'm actually going to be bending the berry stems down. They've got a nice little wire inside of them, so it's actually pliable. And we can just sort of bend that in that direction, that sort of waterfall effect that we want to get. So we have our last two pieces, and we want to make sure that we have this going to the bottom of the wreath. And again, we're going to meet up with the holly on the end of it. Just like that. Okay, our final step in this is our bobbles. Here we've got little clusters of shatterproof bobbles. This is actually in a matte red. And what I really love about shatterproof ornaments is that they can be used for just about anything. You can decorate your tree with them, obviously. Also, we're going to place them in the wreath here. And what I really love about them, they're kid safe, pet safe. You don't really have to worry about breakage from or storage. That's also a big issue. All right, so we're going to take our berry cluster. It's actually got sort of a long stem on that, and rather than cutting that off, that's a lot of work that you don't need to do, is I'm actually going to grab one of my glue sticks, and I'm actually going to just wind that around the glue stick and kind of create a curlicue, if you will, a little twisty. It's a technical term. And we're actually just going to say, we're just going to have that little cluster that way, and that way you don't have to cut all of the stem off. And we're just going to do that for all the clusters. We're just going to get those prepared for us. Shouldn't take but a few minutes. All right, and now we're ready to take our clusters of shatterproof ornaments with our little curlicues on the end of each of them and place them into our wreath. This is going to be the glueless part of our project today. So the first thing that we want to do is, again, on this side, this is where the weight of the ornaments are going to be placed. So I'm going to start actually by using the actual tendrils. Here, that is what these are called in a wreath, in case you were wondering. There's a technical term, again. So we're actually going to use that, and we're actually just going to wrap it through the middle of this cluster, and we're going to bend it down in a U shape, and that's actually going to hold that in place. All right, and if we take our cluster, we're going to put it in the wreath, and again, using the same motion, we're actually going to just wrap it through the center, and we're going to bend that down, and that's actually going to secure each of the clusters in place. You can actually pull on these. You don't need glue. Super easy to do. And we're going to go all the way again out on the left side of the wreath. We're going to space these out a little bit so that there's some consistency in the spacing. But again, I don't like things too perfect. Perfectly imperfect is what I'd like to call it. So it's like I said, you want this to look handmade, hand-generated by you. And again, we're going to work our way down. Again, kind of in that C shape, if you will. We're going to get to the very bottom. We're going to have it end right at the holly. Just like that, and again, secured, nice, has a nice form to it. All right, and as we put that last cluster of ornaments on there, our wreath is going to be complete. As you can see, it's contemporary, it's modern, it feels beautiful. It's going to look great on your door, or it's going to look great on a mirror. You can even do what I did. You see behind me, I've got a mantle there, and I've actually hung it over a picture with a wreath hanger. That's also a great tip. Gives you that kind of personalized designer. And as we finish up on this, I want to say thank you very much. You did the project. I know you did. And it's going to be beautiful. Thank you so much. For more information and tips on holiday decorating, look for us on social media. We are Instagram and Facebook. Also, go to our website and find more information. And some of these products are actually available. That's rogersgardens.com. Happy holidays, everyone.